Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar with Chris Johnson from Maxar. Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
Hey, yeah. Good morning. Good afternoon. Doing great. Good to see you.
Thanks. Thanks for participating. This is gonna be really much a kind of repeat session from what we're going to discuss in 3 weeks in Paris. Can't wait to see you guys there. The topic for today, basically, what we're going to talk for this specific webinar and focus session is about how a satellite prime manufacturer differentiates itself in the current fast moving market context. So just a few words to introduce the topic, but so obviously, as you know, we're seeing unparalleled market changes, very quick changes in less than 10 years. We've seen shifting market dynamics, major technology disruptions on board, on the ground, new market players entering the business, new business models introduced all along the value chain, consolidation. So major one, obviously, last week with Viasat acquiring Inmarsat. We should likely see more in the coming months. So basically, this is really moving very fast. And what we are looking to do today is basically to see how a historical space market player like Maxar adapts its business strategy to remain basically at the leading edge of competition in this moving environment. So that's basically what we'll try to do and cover in the next 30 minutes. In the audience, feel free to ask your questions in the chats, and I will pick questions as they come. So we are going to discuss differentiating strategies in a shifting competitive landscape. So Chris, what I'd like to do is to start maybe by discussing the shifting competitive landscape first, and then how you differentiate yourself and the differentiating strategies next. So first thing about the market shifts, and especially how these major and quick industry changes are seen from the eyes of a historical market player and a leader in the business. I think that's going to be interesting to see your thoughts on this. So yeah, we've seen hundreds of new companies over the last 5 to 10 years attracting investments, sometimes huge investment, developing technologies, introducing really new business models, building capabilities. So what's your views with respect to this emerging new ecosystems? What are the opportunities there? What you see as potential risks brought on by these new waves of new entrants across the segments for yourself or for the industry in general? So that would be my opening question.
Yeah, no, again, good to see you. Can't wait to this is the dry run for actually being on stage here in a few weeks. So good to be here. Certainly, you know, a ton of just exciting activity going on in this market, and that, you know, anybody that's listening to this probably is right in the middle of it, whether they're at a kind of more traditional space company or at one of these you know, newly funded or even, you know, now somewhat mature new entrants into the market. So, you know, just overall, I think it's really positive that it's, you know, adding capability to the ecosystem. It's adding excitement to the ecosystem. You know, if you start talking about the talent that are coming out of, you know, the universities into the fields and folks that are actually pivoting out of other industries that want to be a part of space, I think that is just, you know, tremendous. I will say at other times in my career, it's been maybe a little bit harder to attract and retain those kinds of talents. Do
you see like a wave of people like applying, like a really
there's a huge wave of excitement, especially for, you know, folks that are right out of university, and we've got a really strong intern program, which you know, is a great feeder for us, and you know, we've got a ton of folks that are applying to that program, and we've seen some increases in those numbers and the excitement around that. So, you know, just in general, overall investment and excitement and people looking for additional business models, that I think that's good for all. I think, you know, the real question is, you know, where does that market then eventually, you know, emerge? And at some point, folks, you know, we need to have our customers and we need to probably find a business model that closes. And so, you know, while, you know, a lot of investment coming in creates a lot of the infrastructure that enables, you know, future growth and future business models, at some point you have to transition into, you know, a real business and supporting customers. So, you know, I think that's both the opportunity and the risk when you see this amount of money flowing in, great opportunity to leverage core technologies and a bunch of talent, but then also the risk of, not everyone's going to succeed. And that's part of the investment. And so how do we as a, legacy business with 60 plus years of on-orbit experience, make sure that we're in a position to continue to succeed and continue to find the right partners and investment such that, we're going to make bets and we're going to onboard technologies and find new players, and we need to ensure that they're sustainable to support our customers into the future. So that's a great opportunity, but if you're not doing it kind of in a measured way that's supportive of those activities, it could create risk. But overall, that risk and opportunity balance is way more on the opportunity side for us, and we're excited about how we're leveraging a lot of maybe what would be non-traditional suppliers into our bids going forward.
There's a massive supply coming in, right? With all these projects, new entrants, whether in Earth observation, satellite communications, etc. So there's massive capacity growth, overall. So do you see, as a legacy player, do you see that is challenging the legacy business, or do you see like are you expecting some major consolidation and reorganization in step 2, after this wave of capacity uptake?
Yeah, I think we've already seen some of it, and I don't think any of us that have been in this business for a little while were surprised with the Viasat, MRSat. Maybe the actual pairing, was a little bit of, we could have rolled the dice and maybe come up with some other things. But, when the legacy revenue generating model, typically of direct to home kind of broadcast, kind of that revenue, while flat or just a little bit declining, but still, overall healthy from the amount of, value that those services bring to the customer. Those legacy companies need to figure out what a growth trajectory looks like. And so I think that's a good thing. That's a healthy kind of market reaction to, a changing business dynamic. And so, yeah, I think, markets that are in a more flat state, you will see a bit more of that kind of consolidation. I think that's still going to be a healthy market going forward. And I think from a Maxar perspective, we're really well suited to support those customers as they continue need to provide, really value-added services to a whole sector of people that, while it's really interesting to talk about, what growth in the data market and how IoT, which are both things that we're also very interested in, but, there's sometimes the folks that are still, a good chunk of a core business need solutions and capabilities that continue to, add value, and we'll continue to play and be a strong advocate there. In general, I think what I see, you kind of framed it around overcapacity, perhaps. I think it's actually a growing of the pie, not a, shrinking and a race to the bottom as far as what the margins need to look like on the communication side. I think that's the same thing on the Earth intelligence side as well. So kind of where we're positioned from a Maxar perspective is, really providing the highest quality commercial imagery in the world, and we'll continue to provide that. And I think there will be a growing market on that front. A lot of the other players are dabbling and doing more than dabbling, but in different places in the value chain and different places from a quality perspective. And to me, that continues to just grow the pie overall in what that will mean to the marketplace.
If I understand correctly, what you mean as well is that if these new players unlock new business segment, new applications, that's good for everybody, right?
Yeah, agreed. And so, there's a lot of money, Internet of Things, IoT kinds of activities that are going on. That's a, if you look back far enough, that's kind of a legacy market under a different term. But I think all of the business plans and where the technology and how many connected devices, that's a huge growth opportunity for not only the legacy providers, but a lot of the new entrants as well. So that's another example of where there's been a traditional business that's been stable. How does it continue to grow as the technologies and really the needs of the consumers and the various governments continue to grow, which is great.
Okay. Next question about this opportunity created by this new ecosystem. So you have new players in the game that offers as well new partnership options, I suppose, on your side. Can you give us concrete examples on new entrants, new players that with whom you are working with, and what you do with them, what's the opportunities they have provided, and so on. Can you give us some concrete cases?
Oh yeah, so concrete makes it a little hard because a lot of these interactions are certainly under the veils of how we're competitively positioning ourselves. We are certainly working with a number of suppliers, whether it's across the propulsion systems, whether it's power systems, whether it's different payloads, and looking to add value just across the whole satellite build, whether that's I'm going to have better performance, whether I'm going to drive faster cycle times, whether I'm going to reduce cost, and often customers want all three, which is great. So to me, it's less about the specifics, and when we hopefully win some of these things, and when we do win some of these things going forward, you'll see that we have some folks that maybe haven't typically been a part of the Maxar satellite build. And so kind of the way we typically work with these kinds of folks is, we get our engineers together, ensure that the core technologies on their side fit with what we need to do from a reliability and from a performance perspective on the Maxar side. And then we try to find some joint activities to prove out that technology, such that it's not we walk into a traditional customer with a different risk posture. It's actually, we've done the work to burn down the risk such that this is ready to be inserted, and look, that provides this amount of value. And so we've done that across our supply base, looking and working with a lot of these new entrants into the field. And new entrants is tough, right? New entrants for me could be somebody that's been here 20, because Maxar has been here for 60. So it's it varies a little. It's not just somebody that's popped up a garage a little bit north of here in San Francisco and is building a couple things out of it. Although that might work too, right? Depending on what that technology is and what the mission goals of our customers are.
Okay. Well, one of the questions we receive on the chat is what are the key factors or the conditions that you've seen for a new player to successfully enter the business? I mean, in your experience in dealing with these guys, what makes a successful business case, or what are the key success factors, I would say, and the typical mistakes they make to avoid?
Yeah, I mean, I think the mistakes I've seen are being very focused just on the engineering. I think that's key. That's the entry into the game, but maybe losing focus on what execution needs to look like and what some of the business parameters are. And so having a strong, where are the risks and how do I drive risks out of my system? Where are the opportunities? Not just from a technical perspective, but how do I make sure that from a manufacturing perspective, I've thought about that? Do I have the right people in place in order to go execute? Because transitioning out of design into production that's a big shift. And so, that's where I've seen some of the challenges, that if you don't have the right headset, and if you don't have the right experience base, you don't know what you don't know. And I know that sounds overly simple, but that's where, us working with these kinds of folks, and there's lessons learned and things that they would know that we wouldn't, and vice versa. That to me, it's not just being focused solely on what the technical widget does. It's how does that widget then support the broader business case and the broader business in order to meet commitments.
And how to scale up. Often it's very difficult to scale up from the initial prototype or initial idea to obviously on the production side.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so working, I think that's where I've seen a lot of synergy with our heritage and our on orbit track record. Is how do we not overly burden some of these new technologies with too many lessons learned, but how do we get to a place that we can get to rate and scale and reliability such that we can put them in our products, and that that has that credibility that comes along with being on a Maxar platform.
So how do you see your role and the role of historical market players in this new market environment? And maybe real question would be, how is it different to do your business today in 2021 compared to 10 years ago? How this shifting environment has changed the way you are doing business as a prime?
Yeah. So certainly, I think one thing that Maxar has always been known for and good at is moving quickly. Being a primarily commercial market driven company, that forced us to be agile in order to react to changing customer needs. And so I think that that has even accelerated more for what our customers are looking for. How do you get it to orbit quicker? How do we get to revenue generation quicker? And so that's one thing that we really spent a lot of time focused on, investment on, that reducing that overall build cycle. One thing, typically, the Maxar production system was focused around commercial, and we've seen that having kind of all our eggs in that basket was great when the geo market was 25 to 30 a year. And maybe I'm even inflating that. Maybe it was 20 to 25. It was the good old days, right? But as that has shifted and kind of stabilized more in the in the teens level, we have taken a very concerted effort to diversify our customer base, and you've seen that through a number of the NASA projects that were in build and in design today, and we're really excited about that relationship and the work that we're doing for NASA as we take core products that have been great in the commercial world for a long time and either use them pretty much as is, or made the investment steps and work closely with that customer in order to diversify. So to me, that's diversification out of what was a single kind of market focus because of the changing and pace and what folks are looking for. It has been important. And then on the national security space side, that's also how can we leverage products that were typically built and traditionally built for a commercial customer to go faster with with a similar level of reliability, but at a different value proposition for the national security space. And you're seeing a lot of that kind of work going on as well. So maybe it's having a broader focus, but with a set of customers that are looking for more commercial options, I think puts us in a different spot than we would have been 10 years ago.
Coming back to what you said on the SATCOM side, with these lower, I would say, order levels in the geo side, how do you keep yourself at the leading edge of technology innovation with a lower, volume of orders? I mean, I guess that makes it a little bit more difficult, but how do you compensate this?
Yeah, I mean, a couple different ways. One is, how do you find technologies to invest in that go across the broader customer base, right? So it's better to justify easier returns, not easier, but a bigger addressable market makes some of those upfront investments easier. Other things is, we often talk about cutting edge of technology, often from, can I make the payload or the platform or the widget, a bit shinier. And I'll tell you that customers don't always need the widget to be shinier. They might need the widget to be built in half the time. They might need it to be built at a higher reliability. They might need it to be built at 10 to 20 to 30% reduced cost. So I know it's often easy to talk about innovation really from a technology of what that can do. I think where we're really focused is, how do we drive not only the innovation in the technology, but innovation in our production system and our supply base, and really drive to what the customers need, which is mission value on the government side and business case supporting on our commercial customers. So we think about it a little different than just the purely a tech play. It's how do we add value back into our customers via a range of investments.
Yeah. Talking about the strategy, we started already to discuss about this, but so shifting really on the second part. So how would you summarize Maxar's differentiating factors compared to either the new entrants or like your key competitors? What makes you really different, and what's your specific value proposition or specific competitive advantage compared to these others?
Yeah. So I think being on stage a couple of times and 6 months into this role, that's one thing that we've been really trying to hone in on. And I think best put is, we're at a really sweet spot in the marketplace, in that we are big enough and we've got the facilities and we've got the heritage of 60 years worth of on orbit performance, that you can trust us, and that we've got the chops, we've got the lessons learned, we have the scars. But I've only got a couple thousand folks that work for me, which is pretty small compared to a lot of the folks that I compete with. And so that heritage and discipline and reliability, married with somebody that can move really quick, I think puts us in a spot to where we can address customers' needs, shifting marketplaces in a much rapid fashion, much more rapid fashion maybe than some others. I report directly to the CEO of the company. If I need to get a decision made quickly, it's a phone call away. It's not multiple layers away. So I think that is very specifically a competitive advantage. And so that's kind of, as we look up to our competitors. As we look down to some of the smaller players, we have the size and scale and heritage and reliability that some others don't. And so how do we then apply that heritage to a place in the market where we can react quick with high quality products in order to meet customer needs? And so I think that really is a sweet spot that we're seeing across the commercial market. We've seen that with the civil agencies, and we see that on the national security space side too.
Okay. One specificity as well is the fact that you are vertically integrated, especially on the EO side. Is vertical integration the way forward? Is it really like a key differentiating factor in some cases as well? Do you think, and even if we look at the new entrants, that most of them are vertically integrated, right? So is it really the way that the industry should go, or is it really always case by case? How do you see this as a competitive factor?
Yeah, no, I think it's case by case. I mean, I think there is opportunity for both models, and I think you'll continue to see both models move forward. Certainly on the EO side, we think it's an advantage for us to have custody of our design, manufacturing, through launch to the operations. Like we actually think that is a significant competitive advantage for Maxar as a whole, right? I'm building and delivering 6 Worldview Legion satellites for my partners on the Earth intelligence side. They work closely with commercial and government customers to understand how those satellites are really being used, what capabilities are required, how we can make them more successful. And that is a great feedback loop back into my, manufacturing technology business. And so then I can, do the right investment, create the right products going forward, and so that's a real virtuous cycle that we see. Having that end-to-end understanding and vertical integration is really valuable. I think in other cases, as we look at the business opportunities, that it may not make sense if somebody else is really good at doing something from a vertical perspective. And so how do we find the right partnerships in that case is another avenue that certainly is at the top of mind as we think about expanding.
But you don't see that as a general rule of success, whether on the SATCOM side, on the EO side, it's really, as I said, case by case, but not as a general evolution that we should see in the coming years as a general principle of business.
Yeah, I mean, certainly some of the new entrants have that principle, and I think it works for the goals that they're trying to achieve and for some of the markets that they're going after. I think from my perspective, finding the right partners with kind of common goals and interests and focus can be as powerful or more powerful in cases, because there's a lot of things that we're experts across the systems, but there are folks doing really interesting things, pushing the boundaries of the technology, whether it's manufacturing or tech or price point. I don't want to lose the ability to go leverage. And so back to that investment part that we started with, like us having an open mind and working closely with these folks and not just having it be a Maxar only vertical play, I think creates a great opportunity to leverage a lot of that investment and talent that's coming into the marketplace.
You've talked about earlier about the changes as well on the customer side in terms of innovation versus schedules, for instance, and these kind of things. So could you maybe expand a little bit on this? And over the last years, what have you observed in terms of changing decision-making factors from especially on the commercial side from customers when they're choosing, suppliers, or when they are making their choice of, system and design and so on? How these decision factors have changed over time, and how have you adapted to these changes, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple ways to think about that. When there was a much broader market and really we were focused on each satellite had very specific requirements, and people were trying to differentiate based on a couple percentage points of ERP or propulsion or whatever it might be. I think what you're seeing now is that we're much more focused on how do we drive the business case for these customers, and there might be 80% of a solution for at 20% of the cost or whatever that ratio might be. It's a much more kind of frequent conversation that we're having with our customers on, where are the break points? Where can I get the best performance for the right amount of cost? And really, it's not only having the engineering teams that are working it from the bottoms up with our customers, but also how does it work from a business perspective? I think that's been a change that I've seen.
So it's more partnership based. It's more partnership rather than supplier customer.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. Certainly, I've been a part of those in other places, and and that's things that we've discussed here at Maxar. And I think it can be partnership in the formal sense, but it can also be partnership in the I don't want to just be a supplier and build the hardware you told me to build. I understand this hardware really well. I understand the technologies. How can I make you more effective from your overall business case, such that then I can build something that actually hits what you're going after? And so it's kind of this two-way flow of through the CFO, chief strategy officer kinds of views, but the engineers have to make sure that we've got the right technology going forward. And so I think before it was a lot more RFI, RFP driven from the technical community, and that boiled up to the C-suite. I think that it's going in both directions now, which I think is a really positive thing because it forces us to really think about what our customer business case is, and then that helps drive technology.
And in the future, do you see some key evolutions? Are you expecting some next evolutions in these decision-making factors? So things that you see changing in the future? I mean, we discussed about how things have changed recently or in the last years. In the future, are you expecting some major changes or trends? Or that
I think we'll still see. I mean, there's going to be a healthy market for the direct-to-home broadcast. Again, it's not growing. It's flat a little bit, but even just reading third quarter results from a number of our customers and potential partners, still important. I think we'll see growth continued on the data side. I think we'll continue to see growth on the IoT side. So it's really how we engage in those areas that not only need to be sustained, but grow with a very clear focus on how do we make these customers and their business case more successful.
One last question. I think we are after running out of time. Just one last question. So you have a strong legacy on the commercial market, but how do you leverage this position with respect to your government customers? I mean, you've been more and more, increasingly involved on government, as you said, and I know that's something very important as well on your side. So how do you leverage this? And it's the first question. And second question, do you see more commonalities in terms of requirements from commercial and government customers? Do you see like a kind of conjunction over time?
Yes, I'll start with the second one. So yes, certainly that we see more interaction between those requirements, and some of that's being driven top down. Some of it's because of the nature of the missions that we see that are required on the government side. I still think that there's a lot of work to be done as far as how those technical communities interact, how the contractual communities interact, but we see a desire from the government sector in order to drive us to a more commercial place. And I think you've heard that kind of discussion, and I've heard it on and off for 20 years. And really it's how real is it from a customer perspective? And what I'm sensing and what we're seeing and what the market's telling us is that the governments really want to drive in that direction. So that's exciting. From a what technologies and capabilities, I think was the first part of the question. Like we certainly see that a heritage platform that we continue to evolve that has years and years worth of hundreds of years worth of on-orbit capability, like really scratches the itch for these government customers that might have a different risk posture. And so it's how do we not start from scratch on what's been our heritage and the legacy of what we bring to the table, but look for the small tweaks on the edges in order to get to the performance that's required for a different set of missions.
Okay. Well, thanks, Chris. I think we're on time. So next time we'll see in Paris. We'll extend the discussion. Thanks very much for your time.